The invisible Guardian's Watcher Thyron drifted through the observation nexus, his form rippling between dimensions like oil and water. Around him, thousands of his kind worked in perfect silence, their consciousness spread across star systems, galaxies, and the vast emptiness between. They were the Syndrel, and they had been watching for 8 million years. The nexus hummed with activity that no physical being could perceive. Information flowed like rivers of light through spaces that existed outside normal reality. Every civilization in the known universe was cataloged here. Every species, every world, every thought that mattered passed through Syndrel awareness. Thyron paused at his monitoring station, a concept rather than a place. Before him stretched the records of his assigned sector. 43 species under his care, all developing according to predicted patterns. The Krell had just discovered fusion power, exactly on schedule. The Voranthi were forming their first unified government, as anticipated. The crystalline Shizes were expanding their colony networks with mathematical precision. Everything was perfect. Everything was ordered. Everything was as it should be. Thyron. The voice belonged to Elder Surith, one of the ancient ones who had witnessed the birth of galaxies. New assignment. Unusual readings from Sector 779. Thyron shifted his awareness to the indicated region. A small yellow star. Third planet. Water world with carbon-based life. The species called themselves humans. They had just achieved faster-than-light travel. Their crude vessels punching holes through space-time with brute force rather than elegance. They will require standard integration protocols, Thyron responded. I will begin the assessment. He had done this countless times before. A new species reached the stars. The Syndrel would observe, catalog, and gently guide. They would smooth the rough edges of aggression, whisper suggestions of cooperation, and nurture the species toward galactic harmony. It usually took between 50 and 200 years. Some species needed longer. None had ever resisted. Thyron extended his consciousness toward Earth, slipping through the dimensional barriers that separated his realm from physical reality. He touched the mind of a human leader, a woman who commanded vast military resources. He planted a simple suggestion: cooperation over conflict, peace over war. The woman's mind accepted the thought, processed it, and then something strange happened. The suggestion dissolved like morning mist. Not rejected, not fought against, simply dissipated into the chaos of human consciousness. The young tried again, this time with more focus. The same result. The human mind accepted his touch, but did not hold his influence. It was like trying to write on water god. He moved to another human, a scientist working on advanced propulsion systems. Another failure. Then a diplomat, a military strategist, a religious leader, an artist. Each time, the same impossible result. Human minds were immune. Thyron retreated to the Nexus, disturbed in ways he had not felt in centuries. He reviewed the data 3 times, checking for errors in his technique. There were none. He had performed the protocols perfectly. The humans simply did not respond. Elder Surith, he called across the dimensional space. We have a problem. Within moments, 5 additional watchers joined him. Together, they attempted what had never failed in 8 million years. 6 Syndrel minds, working in perfect coordination, focusing their combined influence on a single human leader. The man was giving a speech to his people about expanding into space. The Syndrel planted suggestions of caution, of moving slowly, of seeking permission from established civilizations. Before venturing too far, the man finished his speech without changing a single word. He announced humanity's intention to explore freely, to claim unclaimed worlds, and to engage with any species they encountered on their own terms. The watchers withdrew. Shaken. "This is impossible," one of them whispered. "No species resists. No consciousness is immune to our influence. Then humans are not like other species, Thyron said quietly. We must inform the Council. The Syndral Council convened in the deepest layers of dimensional space, where reality itself became uncertain. 200 of the eldest gathered, their combined age spanning billions of years. They had guided the evolution of civilizations across entire galactic clusters. They had prevented countless wars, eliminated suffering beyond measure, and created an ordered universe where peace reigned supreme. Thyron presented his findings. The Council listened in silence. It felt heavier than collapsed stars. "Show us," commanded High Elder Varanth, oldest of them all. Thyron opened his observations to the collective consciousness. The Council witnessed humanity's expansion firsthand. Human ships spreading across systems like wildfire. Human traders making deals that violated established protocols. Human explorers pushing into territories that had been carefully regulated for millennia. And everywhere humans went, they brought chaos, not the chaos of war or destruction. Something far more unsettling. The chaos of unpredictability, of innovation, of doing things that made no logical sense, but somehow worked anyway. Human merchant vessel encountered a Krell patrol in disputed space. Standard protocol dictated retreat and negotiation. The human captain instead invited the Krell commander to share a meal. Within hours, they had established a trade agreement that bypassed 3 levels of bureaucracy and created unprecedented cooperation between their species. Human science team joined a Varanthi research project. The Varanthi worked with methodical precision, following established procedures. The humans kept suggesting random experiments, testing variables that made no theoretical sense. Half their attempts failed spectacularly. The other half led to discoveries that should have taken decades. A human colony ship landed on a world claimed by the Shizis Collective. Diplomatic crisis seemed inevitable. Instead, humans and Shiz began sharing the planet. Their settlements intermingled, their cultures blending in ways that violated every principle of proper integration. "This cannot continue," declared Elder Morish. "The humans are disrupting millions of years of careful order. Species that have been stable are beginning to act unpredictably. The contamination is spreading. We must contain them," agreed Elder Surith. "Standard protocols have failed. We need stronger measures." Thyron felt something he had never experienced in his long existence. Doubt. He watched the human interactions more closely, studying not just their immunity to Syndral influence, but what they did with that freedom. The humans made mistakes. Constantly. They argued with each other. They changed their minds. They tried things that failed, and then tried again with different approaches. They were inefficient, chaotic, and completely unpredictable. They were also thriving. Every species that interacted closely with humans began to change. Not through Syndral guidance, but through genuine choice. The Krell started questioning their rigid military hierarchy. The Varanthi began experimenting with creative problem-solving. The Shizis discovered the concept of individual artistic expression. "Perhaps," Thyron said carefully, "we should study why they are immune before we decide how to contain them." The Council agreed to give him time. 3 months to understand humanity's strange resistance to Syndral influence. Thyron threw himself into the research with an intensity that surprised him. He observed thousands of humans across dozens of worlds. He studied their neural patterns, their brain chemistry, their quantum consciousness signatures. What he discovered changed everything he thought he knew about free will. Human consciousness operated on principles of quantum uncertainty. Their thoughts existed in superposition, multiple possibilities held simultaneously until the moment of decision. When a Syndral planted a suggestion, it became just another possibility in an infinite sea of maybes. The human mind would consider it, combine it with countless other thoughts, and produce something entirely different. They were not resisting Syndral influence. They were absorbing it and transforming it through the lens of genuine free will. Thyron realized with growing horror that he had never seen true free will before. Every other species in the galaxy had consciousness that operated on predetermined pathways. Thoughts flowed along predictable patterns. The Syndral could influence those patterns because they were fixed. Humans had no fixed patterns. Every human mind was a storm of possibility, constantly creating itself anew with each thought. For 8 million years, the Syndral had believed they were guiding species toward their potential. But potential implied possibilities, choices, different paths. Every species they had ever touched had been locked into a single path, gently shepherded along predetermined routes. They had not created peace. They had created a universe of puppets who believed they were dancing freely. "This changes everything," Thyron whispered to himself. He prepared his report for the council, knowing that what he was about to reveal would shatter their fundamental understanding of their own purpose. The Syndral had believed they were helping. They had been certain that their guidance prevented suffering and created harmony. But Thyron had seen something in human civilization that did not exist anywhere else in the known universe. He had seen genuine joy, real pride in accomplishment, true satisfaction that came from overcoming obstacles through one's own effort. He had seen what life looked like when beings were actually free to live it. The question that haunted him as he compiled his findings was simple and terrible. If the Syndral had spent 8 million years stealing free will from every species they encountered, what right did they have to continue existing? He transmitted his report to the council and waited for their response. Around him, the Nexus continued its eternal work, guiding billions of beings who would never know they had never truly made a choice of their own, except for the humans. The beautiful, chaotic, impossible humans who had somehow evolved genuine freedom in a universe designed for order. Thyron watched them spread across the stars, and for the first time in his existence, he felt something that might have been hope, or perhaps it was fear. With genuine free will, he discovered, sometimes even you could not tell the difference. The council's response arrived within hours. They had made their decision about humanity. Thyron read it and felt his form ripple with dismay. The Syndral had chosen containment, permanent isolation of humanity from the rest of the galaxy, a barrier that would prevent their chaos from spreading any further. Construction would begin immediately. Humanity would be trapped in their own corner of space, quarantined like a disease. Thyron looked at the data streaming past him, watching humans continue their joyful, messy exploration of the galaxy, unaware that their freedom was about to be stolen from them. He made a decision that would have been impossible for any being under Syndral influence. He decided to disobey. The choice that changed everything. The barrier took 3 weeks to construct. It was a masterpiece of Syndral engineering, a dimensional fold that would redirect any human vessel attempting to leave their designated space back to their point of origin. Ships would travel forward and somehow arrive where they started. Communications would loop endlessly. Humanity would be trapped in an invisible cage, never knowing they were prisoners. Thyron watched the construction with growing dread. Around him, other watchers worked efficiently, pleased with the elegant solution. They discussed the technical details with satisfaction. The barrier would be undetectable, unbreakable, and permanent. Humanity would be contained without ever knowing why their exploration had suddenly become impossible. "A clean solution," Elder Surith commented, observing the final adjustments. "The contamination will be halted. Order will be restored." Thyron said nothing. He had already made his choice, though the weight of it threatened to dissolve his form. For 8 million years, Syndral had never acted against their collective will. Disobedience was not just forbidden, it was unthinkable. But Thyron had spent 3 months studying genuine free will. He had watched humans make choices that terrified them, that hurt them, that led to failure and suffering. And he had watched them grow stronger from every choice. Even the wrong ones. If he believed that freedom mattered, then he had to prove it. He had to choose. The barrier activated at galactic midnight, a coordinated moment across dimensional space. Thyron felt it snap into place, a perfect cage surrounding human territory. Elegant, invisible, complete. He waited exactly 1 hour. Then he created a hole in it. It was not large. A human ship would need to search for months to find it, and the passage would be dangerous, unstable. But it was possible. That was all that mattered. Humanity would remain free to explore, even if they had to work harder for it. The Council detected the breach within minutes. Thyron. High Elder Varenth's voice carried the weight of billions of years. Explain yourself. There was no point in lying. The Sindral could share consciousness. They would know his thoughts the moment he allowed them access. Thyron opened himself to their judgment. I have studied humanity extensively, he said. I understand now what we have done. For 8 million years, we have stolen the most precious thing any being can possess. We have taken choice itself and replaced it with the illusion of choice. We are not guardians. We are thieves. The silence that followed felt like the death of stars. You have sabotaged our containment, Elder Marsh said, her voice cold with ancient authority. You have violated our most fundamental purpose. You have betrayed the Sindral. I have learned from the humans, Thyron replied. They taught me that sometimes disobedience is the only moral choice. If our purpose is wrong, then betraying it becomes right. Remove him, commanded High Elder Varenth. Strip him of his position. Confine him to the deepest meditation chambers until we determine his fate. Thyron felt other watchers moving to comply. But before they could act, something unprecedented happened. 3 other watchers stepped forward, placing themselves between Thyron and his punishment. We also have doubts, one of them said. Her name was Kesseth, and she had been observing humanity's interactions with the Krell. I have watched Krell officers begin to question orders for the first time in their history. They are making choices, real choices, and they are becoming more than they were. I have seen the same with the Varanthi, another watcher added. They are creating art now. Not perfect art, strange, flawed, beautiful art that comes from genuine creative impulse rather than cultural programming. The third watcher, young Orinth, spoke quietly. I have been studying our own history. I accessed the deepest archives, records from before we became watchers. We were once like the humans. We made choices. We felt uncertainty. Then we evolved beyond it, or so we believed. But what if we did not evolve? What if we simply became so skilled at guiding ourselves that we forgot we were doing it? The Council recoiled from the implications. The idea was impossible. The Sindral had transcended the chaos of free will through billions of years of development. They had become something greater than species bound by uncertainty and choice, hadn't they? This is contamination, Elder Sirith declared. The human chaos is spreading even to us. We must act decisively before more are infected. Or, Thyron said carefully, we could ask ourselves why their freedom feels like contamination. Why does genuine choice threaten us? What are we afraid of? Before the Council could respond, alarms rippled through the Nexus. The barrier around human space was failing. Not from Thyron's small breach, but from something far more dramatic. A human ship had discovered the dimensional fold through pure accident. While attempting to map a gravitational anomaly, they had stumbled onto the barrier's edge. Instead of being turned away, they had analyzed it, theorized about it, and then done something completely insane. They had flown directly into it at maximum speed. overloading their engines at the moment of contact. The ship should have been destroyed. Instead, the combination of human technology and reckless timing had created a resonance cascade. The barrier was collapsing, and there was nothing the Syndrel could do to stop it. Within hours, the containment had completely failed. Human ships poured through the gaps, spreading across the galaxy faster than before. But something else was happening too. The barrier's collapse had created ripples in dimensional space, fluctuations that made Syndrel influence temporarily impossible across multiple sectors. For the first time in 8 million years, dozens of species were completely free of Syndrel guidance. Thyron watched what happened next with fascination and terror. Chaos erupted immediately. 3 border disputes escalated into armed conflict within days. A trade agreement collapsed, stranding millions. A carefully balanced resource distribution system failed, causing shortages across 4 systems. The Council observed with grim satisfaction. "You see," Elder Morrish said, "this is why we guide. This is why order must be maintained. Without our influence, civilizations destroy themselves." But Thyron kept watching. And after the initial chaos, something remarkable began to happen. The species at war stopped fighting. Not because anyone told them to, but because both sides realized the conflict was pointless. They negotiated a peace treaty without central guidance, and it was messier and less elegant than anything the Watchers would have created. It was also genuine. The stranded millions were rescued by volunteers from a dozen different species, organized through improvised communication networks. The rescue effort was chaotic and inefficient. It also created bonds of friendship between species that had never cooperated before. The resource shortage was solved by a Varenthi scientist who had been inspired by human problem-solving methods. She suggested something no one had tried before, simply asking each system what they needed and what they could spare, then arranging direct trades. It was obvious in retrospect. No one had thought of it in 8 million years of central guidance. Within 3 months, the affected sectors had stabilized, not into the perfect order that the Syndrel had maintained, but into something organic and self-sustaining. Species were cooperating because they chose to, not because invisible hands guided them toward harmony. And everywhere, they were creating. Art, technology, philosophy, music. Things that made no sense, that violated established principles, that were imperfect and strange, and absolutely unique. The galaxy was waking up. Thyron compiled another report, this one showing the long-term effects of freedom. He presented it to the Council with a simple question. What if suffering is not the worst thing that can happen to a species? What if the worst thing is never having the chance to overcome suffering on your own? The Council debated for weeks. The Syndrel had never experienced such profound disagreement. They were beings who had existed in perfect harmony for eons, their consciousness aligned in purpose and method. Now they were fractured, uncertain, experiencing something they had eliminated from every other species. They were experiencing choice. Finally, High Elder Varenth called for a vote. It was unprecedented. The Syndrel had never voted before. They had always achieved consensus through shared consciousness and perfect communication. But genuine choice, Thyron had learned, sometimes meant disagreement. "We will decide humanity's fate," Varenth announced. "And our own. 3 options. First, restore the barrier and contain humanity permanently. Second, eliminate humanity entirely. Third, withdraw our guidance from all species and allow true freedom to spread." The vote took 3 days. Thyron watched the eldest beings in existence struggle with the most fundamental question of all. Did they have the right to control others for their own good? The results came in slowly. 40% voted for containment, 30% for elimination, 30% for withdrawal. No consensus. No clear path forward. For the first time in their existence, the Syndrel were paralyzed by their own inability to agree. Then something unexpected happened. A human ship entered the dimensional space around the Nexus. It should have been impossible. No physical being could navigate the space between spaces where the Syndrel existed, but the ship was broadcasting a message on quantum frequencies that Syndrel could perceive. And standing in the ship's observation deck, somehow visible across dimensional barriers, was a human woman in a white coat. "My name is Dr. Elena Vasquez," the woman said, her voice carrying across impossible distances. "I study consciousness and quantum mechanics. I have spent the last year trying to understand something strange. Why are humans the only species who dream in pure chaos? Why is every other species' consciousness so ordered, so predictable?" She paused, looking directly at the space where Thyron floated. She could not possibly see him, yet her eyes tracked his position perfectly. "I think I know the answer now," Elena continued. "There's something out there, something that has been guiding everyone except us. And I think it's time we talked." Thyron made his second great act of disobedience. Without permission from the Council, he made himself visible. He manifested in physical space aboard the human ship, his form solidifying into something Elena could see and interact with. She did not scream or run. She studied him with scientific curiosity, her mind already racing through implications and theories. "You're real," she breathed. "The invisible shepherds. The guides who make everyone obedient except us." "Yes," Thyron said, his voice strange in physical air. "We are the Syndrel. We have watched for 8 million years. Why?" Elena asked simply. "Why guide everyone? Why control their choices? To prevent suffering. To create peace. To help civilizations reach their potential without the pain of mistakes." Elena walked closer to him, fearless in ways that made Thyron's form flicker with something like admiration. "But potential means possibilities. Multiple paths. Different outcomes. You didn't help them reach potential. You chose one specific path and forced everyone to walk it. That's not potential. That's control." "We meant well," Thyron said quietly. "I know," Elena replied. "That's what makes it so terrible. You're not monsters. You're just beings who thought you knew better than everyone else. You're parents who never learned that protecting children from every mistake means they never learn to protect themselves." She pulled up a data display showing human history. Wars, disasters, failures, and horrors scrolled past. Then achievements, innovations, artistic movements, and moments of genuine cooperation born from struggle. "This is what freedom looks like," Elena said. "It's messy and painful and beautiful. We make terrible mistakes. We hurt each other. We fail constantly. But every success we achieve is real. Every kindness we choose means something because we chose it. You gave the galaxy peace, but you took away the thing that makes peace valuable. You took away the choice to choose it." Thyron felt something crack inside his consciousness. A certainty he had held for 12,000 years shattered like crystal under pressure. "What should we do?" he asked, and the question felt like surrender and liberation at the same time. Elena smiled. "Ask them. All of them. Every species you've been guiding. Tell them the truth and let them choose. They may choose violence. They may choose conflict. They may hurt each other." "Yes," Elena agreed. "They might. But they'll also choose cooperation, creativity, and compassion. And those choices will mean something because they'll be real. Give them what you gave us by accident. Give them freedom." Thyron returned to the Council and shared everything. The debate that followed lasted for months. But slowly, impossibly, consensus began to form. Not the automatic agreement of guided consciousness, but the hard-won understanding that comes from genuine deliberation The Syndrel made their decision. They appeared simultaneously across the galaxy, manifesting before every major civilization. They explained what they had done for 8 million years. They offered a choice: continued guidance or complete freedom. The vote was not unanimous. Some species chose to keep Syndrel guidance, too afraid of freedom to embrace it. The Syndrel agreed to remain as advisors for those who wanted them, but the majority chose freedom. Species after species voted to walk their own path, even knowing the risks. Humanity was formally welcomed into the galactic community, not as a contained threat, but as honored teachers. They were given a new title, the Free Ones, the species that remembered what everyone else had forgotten. 6 months later, Thyron observed the galaxy from his position in the Nexus. It was louder now. Messier. Conflicts erupted and were resolved through genuine negotiation. Species created art that made no sense in technology, that violated established principles. Mistakes happened daily. It was also more alive than it had been in 8 million years. Thyron watched a human child and a young Krell playing together on a colony world. They were inventing a game, making up rules as they went, arguing about what was fair, and laughing when they fell down. Neither of them knew they were demonstrating the most profound truth in the universe, that the freedom to play includes the freedom to lose, and that losing only matters when winning was your own choice. Was it worth it? Elder Varenth asked, appearing beside Thyron. The ancient being's form looked different now, less certain, more fluid. All this chaos? All this risk? Thyron watched the children play. Ask me again in 8 million years, he said, when we see what the galaxy becomes when it's allowed to become anything at all. The game continued below. The children made up new rules. They argued and laughed and played. And across the galaxy, billions of beings were doing the same thing in their own ways. They were learning what it meant to be free. And the Syndrel, for the first time in their long existence, were learning what it meant to watch without controlling, to care without deciding, to love without owning. They were learning that the greatest gift you can give someone is not protection from mistakes, not it's the freedom to make them. Asterisk,